All right, I'm here. Thank you. All right, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session. I'm Dr. Baochun Hind. Well, my research interest is multicultural competency development. So I'm more excited about today's topic. And I also have two students join me. So Monique and Anam, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Monique Ocanas, and I am a third-year counseling student at Governor State University, and my track is clinical mental health counseling.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anam, and I'm also in counseling program, but my track is school. This would be my third year as well. I'm in my prac right now, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Our program goal is to promote counseling professionals where awareness, knowledge, and skills are working with Muslim clients, students in general. Particularly, we like to focus on Muslim women of Arabic, Middle Eastern, or Asian descent. Because the Muslim populations are diverse, we like to focus on these groups because they share some similar cultural traditions. So today we will have three parts in our presentation. The first part is about the basic facts and knowledge about Muslims and Islam. The second part is about a research project which is focused on hijab and Muslim women's mental health. The third part is the counseling implications and the discussion. Throughout the presentation, you will also have a chance to reflect your own thoughts and feelings toward Muslim women. So for your questions, I hope at the end of the presentation, we should be able to answer your questions. And also as a disclaimer, I'm not a Muslim, but my goal for this project is from a researcher's role, which means being neutral. So I hope you enjoy this presentation. Imagine now when you walk on a street, two Muslim women walking in front of you, and they wear hijab. So think about what you may feel or you may think about these Muslim women. Write down at least 3 words or phrases quickly to describe your thoughts and feelings. I will give you a moment. All right, Anam, would you like to start? Go ahead.
Sure. So as Dr. Hind said, first part of our presentation is basically basic knowledge. We're going to start with Islam and Muslim and what they mean. Islam is the second largest and the most widely practiced religion in the world after Christianity. And the term Islam is in Arabic means submission to God or surrender to God. It's the same meaning that goes with as being a Muslim. The only part is the Muslim is as for a person. Islam is the religion, but the Muslim is for one person who surrenders to God. Next slide. Islamic faith. In Islam, the word Allah simply means God. In Islam, Allah is one meaning, one name, but there is actually, Allah has 99 plus names in Islam. They each mean different words, different things. And then our book for as a Muslim woman and a Hijabi, the book that we follow is Quran. Just like in Christianity's Bible and Torah for Jewish, and Sunnah of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. Sunnah basically means the way of the Prophet. So anything he did, or the way he lived, or the way he even ate, or certain things that he did, we follow, and which is considered Sunnah. There are 5 pillars in Islam. The first one is Shahada, which is as simple as there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the messenger of Allah. And we have, as a Muslim, we are required, not, I don't want to say required because it sounds really bad, but I would say like we are recommended to say the peace be upon him whenever we hear his name. Right after we hear his name, we have to say peace be upon him. And we have 5 daily prayers, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. Fajr is before the sunrise, Dhuhr and Asr is during the day, and Maghrib is after the sunset, and then the Isha, the last one, is an hour after the sunset. Fasting during Ramadan is we fast for a whole month of Ramadan, and pilgrimage is considered also Hajj. Pilgrimage is basically, you go there as a Islamic, this is held only once a year, which is 3 months after the Ramadan. And there are 3 subsets of Muslims in US. The first one is Sunni, which is 65% of them. Sunni is me. I follow the Sunni religion part of that Muslim. Shiaism, which is 11%, and non-denominational Muslims, which is 24%. There's different types of covering when it comes to Islam. We are required by the book and in Islam to cover our hair and make sure the chest area is also covered, and to wear loose clothes where we are not shown the shape of our body in any way. The first one is hijab, where she's only covering her head, her hair, and which is I'm wearing right now, and the chest area. And the second one is chadar, which covers the head area, and it goes a lot of the times it goes up to your knees. It covers, and it's very loose, so you can't even see your arms underneath it. And the third one is niqab, which covers everything but only shows your eyes. Some people might, like depending on what they feel comfortable with, they also wear gloves to cover their hands and socks all the time to cover their feet. It's not recommended. It depends on the person, what they feel comfortable with. And the last one is burqa, which covers everything, even your eyes. So you cannot see any part of their body, or you can't even tell the shape of their body. There's different profiles of hijabis in the US. And first one is blue jeans hijabis. Just a real quick disclaimer about this. It's definitely new to me as well. I required this information after I did the project. Blue jeans hijabis are basically people who wear jeans and stuff. We are not required to wear jeans as a Muslim. Fashion hijabis, fashion, do different fashions, and there are, I want to put this in there as a fashion hijabis because where people wear different type of way they will wear a scarf. So this is a simple way that I'm wearing it. And then there's one where they wear it as a turban. With the turban, you can see their neck. You can see that they have bare necks and it's only covering like up to the chest area. And then they have hijabis that dress in tight clothing and makeup, where they wear makeup. And then there's another hijabis that just do the covering. Next slide. Just before we go into the next part of our presentation, I would like to put this out, true and false, put this question out. Islam is the second largest religion in the United States after Christianity, true or false? And I see Elizabeth, oh, a lot of people put true, which is the right answer. So we are gonna go into statistics and numbers with Monique.
All right, thank you, Anam. So we're going to consider some numbers now, which will provide some further context of our group, as well as some rationale for studying this population. So in 2017, approximately 3.5 million Muslims of all ages were living in the US. And by 2050, that number is projected to nearly double. And what's more, Muslims are anticipated to be the nation's second largest religious group after Christians. And so they would be replacing Jews. So certainly we can see that this really requires our attention as counselors in training to consider this group in counseling. Next slide. Okay, so another true or false or myth or fact, all Muslim women are veiled. What do you guys think? Okay, I see one false. All right. Well, when we're talking about veiled versus non-veiling, roughly half of Muslim women wear head coverings either all of the time or quite often. And so sometimes an exception to that, some women may opt to wear a veil when they're attending mosque or they're engaging in another religious activity. Interestingly, there wasn't a significant difference when it came to wearing the veil among immigrants and US-born Muslim women. And so we might think that being born in the US and having that direct exposure to Western influence might be a factor, but it only accounts for 6% of that difference, which is interesting to note. Next slide. So another true or false. The majority of American Muslims are not native born. The second point, the most Muslims who were born in the US are Black. Okay, I'm seeing some falses. Okay, so when we're considering foreign versus native born, roughly half of Muslim adults in America are immigrants. And so a couple of events have contributed to this. Following the 1952 revolution in Egypt, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, that involved a new set of policies focused on family reunification, attracting skilled labor to the US. That led a second wave of immigration for various immigrants, but especially Muslims. And so in recent years, we note that nearly half of Muslims born in the US are second-generation immigrants. And they've had at least one parent who has immigrated from either the Middle East or North Africa. Okay, so true or false, American Muslims are ethnically monolithic, and all Muslims are Arab and Middle Eastern. Okay, lots of falses. Now we'll see what the research says. So the diversity of this group is actually very colorful. So we can see in 2017, among all US Muslim adults, 41% of them are white, and this is including Arabs and Iranians. Asians, 28%, Blacks, 20%, and Hispanics, 8%. And so what these numbers tell us is that the recent Muslim newcomers in the US are not only diverse in their ethnic backgrounds, but Also that they may have various reasons for immigrating to the US. And so when we think about career advancement, pursuing higher education, professional training, seeking better opportunities for income and living conditions, or even escaping oppressive governments, this really gives us a glimpse into some of the potential challenges that they may face as well and what they may bring into counseling. So I believe this is the last true or false for all of you. Half of American Muslims are converts. What is your response to this? Okay, so I see some mixtures. Good question. Okay. So nearly all immigrant Muslims, 95%, and the majority, 81% of US Muslims have been Muslims since childhood. And we can also see that up to 25% of Muslims in the US are converts. So it's a quarter of them. And among converts, more than half are Black. So very interesting information that we've gathered and presented. And so now I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Hind, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the topic. We're going to discuss a little bit more about the collectivist culture and some more implications on mental health for this group.
I hope from now you got the point that the Muslim groups in the US are very diverse. However, when we zoom in to look at certain Muslim groups such as Arabic, Asian, or Iranian descent, we can see that they share some similar cultural traditions. So we call it collectivist culture. And the other type of culture is called individualist. So both individualist and collectivist cultures are social patterns in which how close people link with each other. And they also kind of like, they point out the priority, whether the individuals are priority or families or groups or even communities are priority. So it's nothing about which one is better than the other one. However, for us as counselors, we better to figure out what kind of strength or challenges our clients bring into counseling rooms with their cultural traditions. In a collectivist culture, there's some common characteristics. For example, collective identity. In this type of culture, people tend to prioritize their family or group identities over than their individual identity, which means the group needs, the group values, the family reputation are much more important. So we see that in this type of culture, people can get family support, which is great. On the other hand, they may be afraid of family reputation may be ruined if they disclose their own, mental health issues, something like that. Another factor is interdependence. In this type of culture, people tend to be close, especially with an extended family. So in clinical setting, if you ask a client, what a family mean to you, we may see that clients coming from collectivist culture, they may introduce not only their nuclear family, also their extended family. So family means not only the parent and the children. It has different meanings. We see the strength of this type of culture is that people can help with each other. Grandparents can help to raise grandchildren, and also the close family tie can provide great support. However, on the other hand, there could be some boundary issues, some in-law issues, some privacy issues. So you see the point, one thought, double size. Also in the collectivist culture, there is a hierarchical system with high respect to men and to elders. So in this type of culture, men and elders on the top of the hierarchy. And the family roles are quite rigid. Women are more expected to raise children and to be submissive. Elders, they are expected to be respected. So in this type of culture, you see that, like the stats already show that Muslims, for that group, there is a very low divorce rate. However, you see when the families live in the US, they encountered American culture, there's some issues may happen with the power struggles, the issues across generations. The fourth characteristic is the authoritarian attitudes and the behavior in parenting. So in this type of culture, children are raised like very disciplined. And there may be some authority, autonomy issues, children, especially when they grow up in the US culture. So we see these characteristics. You may think right now that, wait a second, some culture, for example, African-American culture, we may see some interdependence, but it's not all the four characteristics listed here. So there may be some tendency of being collectivist, but comparing with these Muslim groups, it's quite different. For Muslims, most Muslims, counseling and therapy is like a foreign concept, because those because they are foreign, and traditionally they interpret that mental illness as being crazy. So that they may be hesitant to come to seek counseling, and they may be internalized mental illness as stigma, which may create some challenge. But once they come into counseling, they can be stay with you because perhaps they have already sought out other sources, like their friends, imams, some other sources. So they may like to stay with you. Perhaps also their mental issues are quite severe. So just be aware of that. Some common clinical issues reported in the literature. The most common one is the post-9/11 anxiety. So we all know that the 2001 September 11 terrorist attacks, which create a lot of worry and anxiety among Muslim populations. As we know that those Muslims are just extremists, not represent the main Muslim populations. Another thing is the Islamophobia, which is created since 2016 presidential election campaign. Trump, he had promised Americans that he would ban Islam. Later also he attempted to ban Muslims' entry into US. So the Islamophobia and the 9/11 attacks create a lot of worry and anxiety living in the States for many Muslims. Second common clinical issue is trauma. This especially happened with the refugee group. The third one is the family relational issues. This is quite common, happened between the children generation and their parents, especially the immigrant parents and the children who grow up in the US culture. There's some, because of just now we talk about the different parenting types. The fourth one is the religious identity issues. Quite a lot of young native-born Muslims, because they live in a non-Muslim country, they may not like their parents who grow up in a Muslim environment. These young Muslims, they wanted to explore what really mean being a Muslim. So there may be some identity issues come up. The last one is the marriage issues. Being Muslim women, there are some, traditionally, their marriage could be arranged. So this can create some issues. Also, Islam promotes marriage. Living in the US, many Muslim women, single women, they maybe struggle with getting married. And also there could be some couple issues. So now with such a background, I'm going to move on to the research project, which is about hijab and Muslim women's mental health. Just like the picture we have shown you, that Muslim women quite visible living in the US. Wearing hijab creates quite a lot of challenges and difficulties. So you may wonder, why do they still wear in public, living in such a difficult non-Muslim environment, also being minority? Some Americans, they may also explain in this way. Perhaps they have learned from social media or somewhere. They may think that those Muslim women wear hijab because of their husband pressed them to wear, or because of their fathers or brothers, so gender oppression. And the stereotype about Muslim women is that they are submissive, they don't have their own rights. But the question is it true? What could Muslim women tell us about their stories? When we look close to the literature, since 9/11, September 11, there are quite a lot of studies published focusing on Muslim women, even including hijab. However, there are some limitations about these published quantitative studies. Most of them are cross-sectional. So there's some mixed results about the relationship between hijab and Muslim women's perceived mental health. Some studies reported that wearing hijab predicts the employment discrimination. Like even for those college students on campus, there's some macro level aggressions, discriminations issues happened. Other studies they reported that wearing hijab actually associated with positive body image. And for those Muslim women wearing hijab, they don't have weight problems. So as you see that the limitation of doing quantitative studies, you may just see the links, whether positive or negative. You don't see the detailed stories, the rich narratives from those Muslim women. There's also a research gap. It seems like the native-born second-generation Muslim women immigrants, research about this group is quite less. We know little about their mental health. So based on the literature, we can pose two questions. The first one is, what is it like to be a veiled Muslim women living in the US? The second question is, how does wearing hijab facilitate a psychological wellness and a mental health for American Muslim women? As you may see, for these type of questions, qualitative approach would be better. So when I look at the literature, in fact, since the literature has rich studies published since the year 2000. So instead of doing a study by myself, I think it's very interesting just to look at those published qualitative studies on the hijab and the Muslim women. So I reviewed all the qualitative studies, and I have a selection criteria because my focus is on those Muslim women shared some similar collectivist culture, which means the groups that include Arabic, Asian, or Iranian descent, and also who live in the US just because of the 9/11 and the Islamophobia. It would be very interesting to see their reactions. So looking at those qualitative studies, I found a total of 15 published articles, studies on this topic. So my first coding process is to make a chart, which is, you may see in the background. It's like that. That's the first level coding. The next level coding is to get particular codes from each study. And then the third level code is to look them together to generate some common themes to answer those two questions. So here are the research findings. To answer the first question, which is, what is it like to be a veiled American Muslim woman living in the US? From those published studies, qualitative studies, those participants who, by the way, they were all interviewed. So the data were very rich, very in detail. From those studies, we found some common pattern about these veiled Muslim women. The first one is across all studies. It's very common. They may experience aggression and macroaggression. It's not a surprise. Second, these Muslim women, they are not seen only by their head covering, the visibility, but also by their skin color and gender. What does this tell us? We see that Muslim women, they are not identified as by their religious visibility. Also, they are a person, they may be recognized as a person of color, and they are women. So this type of interlocking system may create double or even triple jeopardy on this population. The third is that the decision of willing is conscious and personal, which definitely is not due to male oppression. From their point of view, willing or not willing is their personal choice. They make their decision, not from anyone else. Number 4, individual women's interpretations about wearing hijab varied, and the hijab can carry rich meanings. Traditionally, people may think that hijab represents modesty and protection. That's the most common view. However, from these Muslim women participants, their own narratives, you can tell that the meanings of hijab varied. It seems like each of them has their own interpretations why they wanted to wear hijab. Number 5, wearing hijab is interpreted overwhelmingly positive. This is very interesting. From these participants, they shared how strong they feel after wearing hijab. Number 6, young and second generation immigrant Muslim women may experience hijab differently from their older generations, especially in the process of navigating their religious identity. Throughout these studies, we see a different patterns for these two different Muslim women groups. For those native born, most likely second generation immigrant Muslim women, they tend to have more agency, being more conscious about, and being more conscious and decisiveness about wearing hijab. For the older generation, they may say, oh, I wear hijab because my parent, my mom and my aunt, they all wear hijab. So there's a different scenarios. The last point, Muslim women, regardless of their reading status, hold varied views between traditional values and feminism. Definitely, Muslim women, they are not homogeneous. The degree of religious beliefs varied. Some women, they kind of also take a feminism view, in the sense that they may think, I can go to work with males wearing hijab. That is okay. But for some other Muslim women, they may think it's not okay for me to work with an individual, a male co-worker. You see that it's varied. So what does that mean for us? We cannot assume each Muslim woman, perhaps she is very religious or not. We have to do assessment first. And also whether Muslim women can work with male counselors. So from this research project, I would say that definitely we have to check with them. Some of them may feel okay to be with a male counselor in a counseling room. The second research question I asked about how wearing hijab facilitated Muslim women's mental health? To answer this question, I look closely the narrative, the interview data from those studies. Wearing hijab is constructed in positive ways, which may facilitate some sense of wellness for Muslim women. So I coded these 6 themes. These are all positive ways for Muslim women for their mental health. In the next few slides, I'm going to talk in detail each theme. The first theme is empowerment and strength. Muslim women wearing hijab means a huge commitment to Islam. And Islam is also a powerhouse for them. I have a quote here from a participant. As you may see from this quote, there is so much more knowledge you gain by wearing it, so much more jihad. Jihad means refrain from personal sins and pursue the good. So much more strength because you are constantly confronted by people who want to know. The second theme is agency and free choice. Wearing hijab means that Muslim women, they have their own agency. They choose to wear on their own, not from anyone else's decision. Here is the quote. So this woman, we see that how she responded to her non-Muslim friends. She said, I think they think that I have lost my freedom to just show myself off. And to me, it's not a loss. It's more freedom to know that I do not have to primp and be shown off for the rest of the world. In fact, she has gained more freedom by wearing hijab. The third theme is self-assurance and self-discipline. Good Muslim women will. That's what most Muslim women interpreted by wearing hijab. By wearing hijab, they ensure themselves that they are good Muslims and they behave in a positive way. Here is a quote from a study participant. So she said, this is my hijab, and I have to respect the hijab in a sense that I have to be good all the time because I'm fearing God, because this is what Allah told me to do. And I better be good. So it's much more conscious. It's self-discipline. And that is what Islam is all about. By wearing hijab, it creates a sense of self-assurance, and also it's discipline. The next theme is self-dignity and modesty. Modesty is more about behaviors. Being humble is more about your attitudes. So modesty is not, some people may interpret modesty as being negative because being shy may interpret it not positive. However, for Muslim people, being modest means like they respect people. Also, it means self-respect, self-dignity. Like this quote, this participant shared, when you go out wearing the scarf, people are not going to expect you to be a party animal. They're not going to expect you to be the sexually promiscuous type. So wearing hijab creates a sense of self-dignity. The next theme is community belonging and connectedness. Wearing hijab, especially in a non-Muslim country, like in the US, creates an opportunity to build a peer relationship. You know, they may make friends just because of identifying the hijab wearing. This sense of connectedness is really important for mental health, as we all know. So here is the comment from the two authors. The video helped one participant not only to form meaningful peer relationships at that pivotal time in her life, but also continues to facilitate for her a feeling of connectedness with a broader religious community or other veiled Muslim women. The final theme I found from this study is education and career pursuits. For those Muslim women who adopt the traditional Islamic culture and beliefs, they gain protection and the liberation by wearing hijab. So it's not like most people think wearing hijab prevents them from pursuing their American dream. In fact, it's the opposite. Wearing hijab gives them freedom, gives them liberation. It's almost like wearing hijab creates a space for them to feel free to work with male workers. Like this comment from the same authors. Wearing hijab liberates them from men's untamed, potentially explosive sexuality and makes possible for them various sorts of public sphere pursuits. Wearing hijab helps them to pursue their American dream. So this is very positive for these participants. Well, after learning these research findings, we may see a different picture just from their own Muslim their own stories. And they are not oppressive. Wearing hijab actually means very positive, and that positive sense can facilitate their mental health and psychological wellness. So next, let's look at again this photo. After learning more knowledge and research results about hijab and Muslim women, now think about at least 3 words or phrases to describe your thoughts or feelings. We will give you a moment. I hope now you can replace the original thoughts with some new words, phrases. The final part about our presentation is the counseling implications and discussion. Based on research findings, we see the overall strategy to work with Muslim women clients is multicultural and social justice counseling. Why? Because they are minorities and religiously, ethnically, and culturally minorities. As counselors, we have to respect their religion and culture. Social justice counseling is another point. Because of social oppression, advocacy and social justice is the must in order to work with this group. A counselor's activeness and a counseling duration may vary due to the client acculturation level. So for those Muslim clients who hold the traditional culture values, it may be good to be a little bit direct, to be more active. And the counseling duration could be maybe shorter is better because of their mental health stigma. They may view you as authority. Of course, you can educate them, but overall, they may view you as doctor type of authority, and they may hope the counseling process is short. However, for those native born, especially second generation immigrants or even who have adopted American culture, this is not the case. So you may assess, perhaps collaboration is the best approach, counseling approach. Provide a space to address their cultural related mistrust and suspiciousness of counselors. This is especially in the initial counseling stage. As we have learned that because of the cultural traditions, they may not trust you as a counselor. And this is where the place building rapport and explaining to them confidentiality. In my own clinical experience, I have to address confidentiality each session again and again to ensure them what counseling is about. Assess the degree of religiosity and the client's integrated culture and religious values and worldviews. As we discussed that Muslim groups are not homogeneous, we have to assess. Some of them, they may not pray 5 times at all a day. And some of them, they may even wear hijab, but their religious commitment may not be very strong. So you have to assess. In addition, you have to also assess their cultural values and traditions. The discussion on their self-identity and the meanings of the hijab can be quite therapeutic and powerful. Some questions you may ask young Muslim client or student is, what's it like to be a Muslim? What is it like to be a Muslim woman? Or even what is it like to be a Muslim woman wearing hijab, living in America? These questions can direct your clients to think about their own identity. And so often their issues come from their own identity development. And exploring the meanings of the hijab also quite powerful to let them know that they can be empowered. A strength-based narrative approach could be effective. So I have used some genogram, family or culture genogram for those you may not be familiar with cultural genogram. I found it's extremely useful, especially when you work with young second generation Muslim women. By using genogram, they have a chance to really know about their parents, their ancestors, their cultures, their religious beliefs. So by sharing their stories, they can reconstruct their own narratives. The last implication I would like to talk is about feminism. So womanhood empowerment and feminism approach should match with the client's culture and religious values. I have seen so many colleagues, they like to jump in to use the feminist approach to work with Muslim women. I say that it's not appropriate. For many Muslim women, they can be quite feminists, but their feminism is within their Muslim culture, their own culture. So you may call them Muslim feminists, but definitely there may be a gap, it may be different. So you may have to assess first their own culture and religious values before using feminist approach. Because of the time reason, we're not going to talk about case study, but I found some case vignettes in these 3 published articles. If you are interested, you can go ahead to look those. It looks like there are a few minutes left. So we like to share a little bit our own learning experiences. Monique, do you want to talk a few?
Sure. So for me, there were a couple of takeaways. Speaking from the place of a non-hijabi Christian Westerner, I realized that acknowledging my limited knowledge, right, on this topic was the first step for me. And assuming that cultural humility, at the same time owning up to that responsibility, and also that curiosity to educate myself, and even educate everyone here connected to this space, was a really important part of this project for me. And in particular, what resonated with me the most, learning about those narratives of what the hijab means to Muslim women, hearing about that positivity, that empowerment, and the agency. And interestingly, that challenges a dominant narrative, right, of what the Western culture builds the hijab to be, as something that's restrictive or oppressive or submissive, as that type of motif or a symbol. So that was a beautiful thing for me to learn more about. And that gave me more insight into how I can build that strengths-based approach in a clinical setting.
Great. Anam, would you like to share some?
Sure. Working on this project was, as a Muslim woman, it was still new to me, and I learned so many different things from the studies. And one of the ones that we talked about, the different profiles of the hijabis, was new to me because I've never heard of that. So coming from there, and then as a hijabi myself, I did not realize how the people, as an American Muslim, how everybody else saw us, I want to say, as being put down by men, and all, like, not being educated or not giving the rights and everything, which is definitely was new to me as well. But it was the best time well spent learning more about my own religion, my own understanding of hijab itself, and what other people and those research talked about.
Wonderful, thank you. So let's see if you have questions. Okay, I saw one question. Marilla, do you find that more Muslim women are seeking counseling? I would say yes. The mental health stigma we have talked, that is most likely applied to the groups with holding with traditional cultural values. However, we see more and more American-born Muslim women, they really view the counseling as helpful. And some studies even say that Muslim women prefer counseling much more than Muslim men. So there is a hope.
I'd like to mention a point as well, if that's okay, Dr. Hind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one of the things that I came across, one of my colleagues actually, she interned at a place called the Khalil Center. And this is a counseling center that actually it's a mental health provider for the Muslim population. And so it kind of destigmatizes counseling, mental health services. And so all across Northern America, they have different locations, even in the Chicagoland area as well. So that's something for all of you to check into if you're curious.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add that to what Monique just said? The school site that I'm working with, I'm actually in an Islamic school right now, doing my practicum, and they actually use Khalil Institute for any referral they want to give to the students and the parents.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have a center right by their school, which was
Awesome.
surprising to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
That we're doing that.
All right, great. It seems like there's no more questions, and also the time is up. Thank you again for attending our session. I hope you enjoy your evening and the rest of the conference. Thank you.